Good morning, everyone. It's great to see so many faces, old and new. We're delighted that you've joined us today for this exciting and informative webinar on consumer duty. As part of our commitment to help firms navigate the intricacies of the FCA, we've designed a framework to provide clear, guided approach for achieving compliance. We believe that this tool will not only demystify the compliance process, but also help optimize your resources. Now, it's my privilege to introduce the driving force behind Complyfirst. Fiona, our CEO, has been instrumental in bringing this framework to fruition. She brings years of experience and an unrivaled passion for compliance. Fiona will kickstart our session with her valuable insights into the significance of consumer duty and how our framework can aid you in this journey.
Thank you very much, Dan. So good morning, everyone. I'm your host, Fiona, and your co-host, Dan. It's great to have you here this morning for our Consumer Duty webinar on mastering the FCA's consumer duty. So I'd like to quickly run through a short agenda of what we will cover in our call today. We've scheduled the call for an hour. It may run a little under, in which case you get a couple of minutes back on your Friday morning, but we'll see how we go. So in terms of agenda, we will tell you a little bit about Complyfirst and myself and Dan, the founding team. We will then open it up to the audience with a poll asking you what you think your consumer duty readiness is like at this point in time. Then we will run through a timeline of the consumer duty and how we have got to where we are today, what the consumer duty looks like, what the requirements look like, and how to comply with those requirements in practice. Then I will walk you through the tools and resources, the free tools and resources that we are providing to you through our platform. And I will hand over to Dan to then provide you with a walk through the platform and how to access those resources and tools and DIY documentation and make the most of it. At the end of that, we will wrap up with 10 minutes of Q&A. So you can ask us almost anything. We will do our best to answer. And we'll close with one quick ask of you guys, which is that you complete our feedback survey. Let us know how you find today, the webinar. Let us know how you find our platform and our tools. We will likely send you that email on Monday next week, so keep an eye out for that in your inbox. And we will give you our contact details at the end, and don't hesitate to reach out to us with any questions. So with that, we'll move on. So very quickly, a little bit about Complyfirst. So we are a regulatory technology company, and we provide solutions to payment companies like yours that need to comply with the FCA regulations. So we build and provide technology that makes your regulatory compliance easier. So everything from your regulatory reporting to your policies and procedures and your attestations, Complyfirst makes that more streamlined, more user-friendly and error-free. So it's our mission to equip you with the tools that you need to get your FCA compliance done with a minimum of fuss. And that's our very simple mission. So a little bit about myself and Dan, the founding team. As Dan mentioned, I'm the CEO. I'm a compliance expert. I have 12 years experience in financial services compliance. Prior to that, was called to the bar in England and Wales as a barrister. So have that unique practitioner experience and a legal background. Have also been certified as a certified anti-money laundering specialist and certified by Cambridge University in regulatory technology. I have both the big and small experience. So I have compliance experience from working in big investment banks for many years, designing and monitoring compliance processes. And I also have a compliance experience working at an authorized payment institution here in the UK as well. So I'll just hand it over to Dan to introduce himself.
Hi guys, I'm Dan. I'm the CEO of Complyfirst. Like Fiona, I've worked in foreign exchange for over 10 years now, initially in investment banks in London, and then at an authorized payment institution in the UK and Ireland. Here at Complyfirst, I manage the finance, operations, and technology.
Brilliant, thanks, Dan. So a little bit of housekeeping, sorry, before we get started. So what is the purpose of this webinar? Well, with just 1 month to go until the Consumer Duty implementation deadline, which is 31st of July, this webinar was set up to act as a final checkpoint, if you like, and to help you assess your readiness for Consumer Duty coming into force on the 31st of July. So with this webinar, afterwards we will give you access to our platform that will help you dot the I's and cross the T's, and you'll be able to use free resources, a free assessment tool, and DIY documents and templates, which you can then customize to your firm and ensure that it reflects your Consumer Duty practices and controls. We go next. Yeah. So, who is this webinar for? So we've tailored it specifically for UK payment companies. So it's a really great resource if you're proactive and you're willing to self-serve. So what we mean by that is you're willing to carry out a self-assessment and you're willing and capable of customizing your own templates to suit your own unique business requirements. It's perfect for you if you're in that scenario, in that situation. The webinar may not be the best fit for you if you need intensive one-on-one assistance or you need bespoke legal or consultancy advice. So I'm just going to quickly open it up to you guys, the audience, with a quick poll on what you think your Consumer Duty readiness is like at this point in time. Are you A, you're fully primed and you're ready to go already? B, are you making progress and you're almost there? Or C, do you need more time to prepare? Let us know by clicking on the poll.
So we'll just keep this section quick, but it's amazing to see that over 40% of people have selected B and over 40% have selected C. So clearly there's substantial work that everybody still needs to do to comply with the Consumer Duty. I will end the poll shortly and pass back to Fiona.
Yeah. Well, that is interesting with the 40% split between B and C. I guess the point with the webinar and the resources is that no matter where you are in the spectrum, we can help you get ready for that 31st of July implementation deadline. So whether you're fully primed and ready to go, you may just want to conduct a quick self-assessment using our self-assessment tool and satisfy yourself that you can sleep easy, you've done everything you need to do. If you're almost there and you need help with a self-assessment and templated documents, for sure, we can help you with that. And likewise, if you're in option C, it's well suited to you as well. So in terms of the Consumer Duty timeline and where we have got to today, as you know, last July, the FCA published their final rules and guidance on the Consumer Duty, and firms had a very quick turnaround to agree, for their boards to agree Consumer Duty implementation plans back in October last year. So there was a lot of work to be done in a very short space of time. As of April this year, manufacturers who provide distributors with products, for example, they have had to have their reviews completed on time to provide distributors with information. But for most of you guys on the call, your implementation deadline proper is the end of July, and that is for all open products or services that you provide. If you have closed products and services, that will be end of July next year. So very quick pithy summary of what the consumer duty is. I like this quote. It sets out in a nutshell what it is and what it requires. So the new consumer duty sets higher, clearer standards of consumer protection in financial services and requires firms to put their customers' needs first. So we'll delve into what that looks like in a moment. So why is it so important to comply with the consumer duty in time? Well, Sheldon Mills, who heads up the consumer duty at the FCA, the consumer duty team there at the FCA, he has made clear in various speeches recently that the FCA has provided resources for enforcement to their consumer duty teams, and that they will be monitoring consumer duty from day one of implementation. So the resources are there and they're ready and they're watching. They will act swiftly and assertively where they see evidence of harm or risk of harm to consumers, and you can expect them to take robust action such as interventions, investigations, and possible disciplinary sanctions. So it's really important that we get in the right space in time for the end of July. So I'm sure at this point in time, you've all heard what the high-level principles and requirements of the consumer duty are. So the FCA have said there's 4 key outcomes that they want to see, and these are these boxes in navy blue. They want to see good outcomes for consumers across products and services, price and value, consumer understanding, and consumer support. And across each of those 4 sections, you have 3 cross-cutting rules. So the 3 cross-cutting rules are that your firm needs to act in good faith towards consumers, that you need to act to avoid foreseeable harm to consumers, and that you need to enable and support your customers to pursue their financial objectives. And all of that links together and stacks up in theory to good customer outcomes at the top. So the FCA are sharply focused on good consumer outcomes, and that is what that's their yardstick that they will be measuring your policies, controls, and procedures against. So if I quickly run you through each of these 4 key outcomes. So I guess actually the first place to start is with good outcomes. So good outcomes requires you to put yourselves in your customer's shoes. You should define clearly what good outcomes looks like at the start and then work back from there. So in terms of products and services, starting there, you should ensure that your products or services that you provide truly meet your consumers' needs and provide them with good outcomes. So how would you get started on that exercise of assessing, do they meet customers' needs and do they provide good outcomes? Well, you could start by creating a customer persona for your target market, and that will require you to get really specific on your customer. So for example, you could come up with a persona name, background, job, education, what's their health like, what age are they, what's their personality type, and what communication channels and preferences do they have, and what are their overall needs, characteristics, and financial objectives. So with that, you can get really clear on who your identified target market of customers are. And what you do from then is you design your products and services, your distribution strategy, and your support, and you wrap it around your target market of customers that you've identified. So you'll clearly want to know when you're doing a customer persona in this way, what does good look like to those customers? And we have got a very helpful customer persona template built into our platform, which you can leverage, and it will prompt you through this exercise that I've just described. So once you've done that exercise, and while you're doing that exercise, very important not to forget about potential vulnerable customers in your target market. Research has shown us that nearly half the UK population have characteristics of vulnerability. So it's something you need to be very conscious and careful of. Consider those potential vulnerable customers in your target market, and consider how your products and services are accessible to them and how you adapt on an ongoing basis to support them and meet their needs. So in terms of the second outcome, which is price and value, you need to ensure that your offering as a whole provides fair value and good outcomes for your customers. So again, what does that look like in practice? Well, the FCA want you to conduct a fair value assessment, and that doesn't just mean considering price. You have to consider value in the round. So that would involve considering things like, what are the benefits that your offering provides to customers, and are those benefits reasonable? Are any limitations within your products and services reasonable? Is your customer support level reasonable? And is your overall offering aligned with your customers' reasonable expectations? What would the average customer in your target market expect from you? You could also consider things like, what's the total cost to your customers over their lifetime of working with you? And are you in line with the competition in the market on that? Or are you an outlier? Are you really, really costly and really expensive? You could also consider, if you're asking customers to provide you, if you're leveraging non-financial costs in your customers, for example, if you're asking them to provide you with their data, is that reasonable? Are you getting a reasonable level of data from them to compensate you for the transaction, or is it a bit much? Is it unreasonable? And if you charge different groups of consumers different pricing, again, question, is that reasonable? Is that fair value? Are we penalizing our loyal customers, or customers from certain geographies, or vulnerable customers? Consider very carefully, are you meeting customer needs, and including, are you meeting the needs of vulnerable customers? And that should go into your fair value assessment. And similarly to the products and services outcome, we have a fair value assessment template in the platform, which prompts, has all those questions and prompts and guides you through that workflow. So in terms of consumer understanding, this one is highly interlinked with customer support. So what you'll want to do here in both cases is consider mapping out the customer life cycle and their key touch points and interactions with your company. And why would you want to do that? Well, it's so that you can provide them with relevant information that meets their needs at the right time. And your communications should inform them and support them to make good decisions that are in the customer's own best interests. So what kind of interactions and communications are we talking about? So that could include potentially your interaction and your communications that you send out at the initial point of contact, the communications that you send out around onboarding, what information does the customer get from you, information that you send out around when you provide a quote to a customer. Just on the point of sending out quotes and deal confirmations, the FCA have made it clear in their letter to payment firms and e-money firms that they expect you to be clear with customers on when you're providing a regulated or an unregulated product or service. And what that means is, for example, if you're providing a payment service, that's a regulated service and it has some regulatory protections with it, such as safeguarding. Where you're providing an unregulated service, such as pure FX, you need to make clear that there are no regulatory protections available with that. The FCA also want you to make clear to customers the difference between safeguarding and the regulatory protections available at a bank, for instance. So a bank can provide customers with protections under the Financial Services Compensation Scheme. And for a lot of customers, that's and individuals, that's a source of confusion. So they want you to be really clear with customers on those points and be upfront with it. So again, consider, your quotes, your deal confirmations, consider when significant changes arise that you need to let customers know about. For example, if you're changing your terms and conditions, let them know what is changing, when it's changing, why it's changing, and if there's any action that they need to take, tell them up front. And you could also consider what sort of information are you providing to your customers during your KYC refresh. Have you made it clear why you need to do a KYC refresh? Have you made it clear how they need to comply with your request? So it's thinking about the customer's needs and concerns at each stage and at every key interaction with your company, and what are the key messages that you should be including in your key communications so that you can support their understanding and effectively support good customer outcomes. So the fourth key outcome that the FCA want to see is customer support. So again, you need to consider the relevant touch points in the customer life cycle and their needs, characteristics and objectives. And it's going to be really important for you to be prepared to adapt flexibly to the needs of vulnerable customers when you're providing customer support. Because, for example, some will need written communications from you. Some will find written communications very challenging, and they may need additional support, whether that be by phone or a video call or in person, depending on your business setup. But you need to be prepared to adapt flexibly. You should train your staff to identify signs of vulnerability and record needs like your customers' communication needs and preferences in your CRM. So in terms of the 3 cross-cutting rules that you'll see in teal that cut across those 4 outcomes, they can largely be covered off by good culture, good governance, and accountability. So defining again what good outcomes look like for your customers, embedding that within your company's operational fabric. So ensuring that you've appointed that consumer duty champion at board level, ensuring that you've trained your staff on the consumer duty and identifying signs of vulnerability in customers, ensuring that incentives and staff remuneration is aligned with a consumer duty. So you're not incentivizing staff to pressure sale customers products or services that aren't right for them. Your board should be looking at that, and documenting your consumer duty program and having your board provide an annual approval that your consumer duty assessment for your firm is in good order every year. All of those things can help your firm ensure that you're meeting cross-cutting rules. And lastly, as I mentioned, the FCA are super focused on the outcomes that customers get in practice. So what you'll need to do is use consumer-centric metrics and data to monitor the 4 key outcomes that I mentioned there, and that your customers are getting good outcomes overall. So there's a ton of examples of data that you can use for monitoring purposes in the materials that we're going to provide to you within our platform. There's also an outcomes monitoring template, which is a really great place for you to get started on thinking, okay, what do good outcomes look like? How will I monitor them? And what data should I use? And that's all within the outcomes monitoring template. Next slide, please, Dan. So quick summary, recap on how to ensure compliance with consumer duty. Make sure that you embed your customers' interests in your company culture and operational fabric. So from the top down. Prioritize your customers' needs in product design and distribution. So thinking about that customer persona and using the customer persona template. Ensure that you're offering fair pricing and terms. So that will link with your fair value assessment template. And ensure that you're using clear and effective communication for customer understanding. So that involves mapping the customer journey or life cycle with your company and thinking about your key communications at each point in that life cycle. 5th is to ensure that you can adapt flexibly and that you have some sort of exceptions process for supporting customers with different needs or vulnerabilities. And the last is to ensure that you're monitoring that customers are getting good outcomes in practice. That is key. Next slide, please, Dan. So in terms of tools and resources that we have built and made available to you within our platform, we have we're recording this webinar and that will be uploaded to our platform so you can re-watch it at any time. We've provided written step-by-step instructions within the platform, which tells you the next steps to take and how to get compliant. We've provided a self-assessment tool, which will give you an overall score, so you can measure your readiness at this point in time. Am I compliant with the consumer duty or not? And it will provide you with action points and steps to take to get compliant. And you can retake that self-assessment as many times as you like, particularly useful if and when you've changed your policies and controls and procedures, that you may want to redo that self-assessment again and just get that higher score on your record. So we've provided 6 or 7 different DIY compliance templates. I mentioned them earlier. It's really, really important that you review them thoroughly and customize them to fit your needs. I can't stress that enough. They're templates, but nobody knows your business and your unique circumstances like you do. So spend time customizing it and it will be well worth it. We also provide an area where you can upload and store your documentation once you've customized it, so that can act as evidence. So if you ever get a request for your policies, controls, and procedures, log on to our platform, download the evidence, and it's right there. We will then ask you if you want to provide a director's attestation. So that is a really good way of ensuring an audit trail that someone at director level, board level has signed off this consumer duty workflow and your associated documentation, and that they're satisfied. So great for audit trail purposes. Last but not least, at the end, once you've done all of that, you will get a consumer duty completion certificate. So that is a certificate that says you have gone through our workflow successfully. And if you would like an email reminder from us before your 1-year deadline, when the FCA says you need to re-review all this material, we can email you in 10 months' time. So I think with that, I'm going to hand over to Dan for a demo of the platform.
Yes, thank you, Fiona. That was very insightful. So this is a quick overview of how our platform looks. Let me just change my screen and show you it. So here we built a consumer duty compliance framework, which provides a structured approach to ensure your firm's alignment with consumer duty. So starting off, we have the webinar here. It'll be uploaded shortly after we finish here today. We then provide a series of instructions, like Fiona mentioned, guiding you through the different steps in our framework. So as you can see here, the steps are on the left-hand side. We have a self-assessment tool next, which consists of approximately 100 questions to evaluate your readiness. We'll then give you a score so you can identify which areas of your business and maybe aren't complying with consumer duty right now, so that you can work on fixing that. We then provide policy templates to aid with fixing that process. You're then able to redo the self-assessment tool to then recheck where you then are. We then, like Fiona said, have the ability to upload evidence of compliance, and then the attestation and completion certificate. So I'll just run through what that all looks like now. So as you can see here, we have the self-assessment tool. I filled this out before because there's approximately 100 questions. I didn't want to be here all day. There's a little bit of guidance at the top. And then throughout the survey, there are information buttons guiding you if there are any sort of slightly more complicated questions. Fiona's gone through and given a sort of clear definition of them. So if we go down to the score, this is what it looks like. So I filled it out. There's 8 different sections that we've broken the questions into. And you can see that there are little actions beside ones where the questions have been answered in a certain way, which means that we'd like you to review and ensure that you can demonstrate that your company is now doing some of those guidance. And then once you've completed this, you can obviously retake it at a later time, but you have a series of 7 documents which form the different policy templates. So starting off, we've got the consumer duty policy, which is a 26-page policy, which is all about setting out what you as a firm are doing on your consumer duty. We then have a target customer persona template, which you can then edit. And then we've got product and service risk assessment, product approval form, distribution strategy canvas, fair value assessment, customer lifecycle map and communications plan, and the outcomes monitoring template. So let me just show you quickly around them. So we'll just download all of them. So here we are, first of all, with the consumer duty policy. As you can see, please, remember, you have to, replace and customize these templates as you should for your company. So we have some guidance notes at the top, and then throughout the document, there are various highlighted sections where we'd really like you to pay careful attention to and even insert certain of the other documents once you've completed them. So I'll show you around those documents now. So here's the list of the templates. So first of all, we have the target market customer persona template. So here what we've done is we've done a full example of how one could look like. And then we've also left you a blank template for you to fill out as what your firm's personas are. So here you can see we've gone through the background, demographics, identifiers, including vulnerability signs, what good outcomes look like, and what the needs, characteristics, and objectives really are of your target customer persona. We've also got a product and service risk assessment. This is all about, looking at what products and services you currently offer, the target market needs and what their characteristics and objectives are, the risks that you've identified with those products and services, the risk, the likelihood, and what mitigation and new controls you're going to put in place in order to make sure that you comply with the regulation. So if we go through the quick example, for example, when it comes to money remittance, one thing that I'm sure the FCA is going to be looking at is how clear your fees are. So whether you're marking up on the exchange rate or if you're doing a set fee, I think it's going to have to be extremely clear to the customer where that fee lies in the transaction. And for example, a mitigation could be that you display not only the percentage charge on if it's on the exchange rate, but you also explain what that means in terms of a monetary amount. And ideally, as the customer's placing the transaction or before the customer's placing that transaction. So we also have a product approval form template. So this is more for sort of new products that you're looking to bring to market, or even ones that you've got existing, but looking at sort of what the risks and impact to the customer could be. So who are the target of that? Who are the target customers of this product? What is the benefits? What are the potential risks? And what measures you've taken as a business to minimize those risks, to make sure that customers, and especially those vulnerable customers, achieve good outcomes. We've then got a distribution strategy canvas, which enables you to look at the way you distribute your products. So looking at your target market, whether you use any third parties like distributors or agents, your distribution channel, your controls in place, how appropriate that product is for your target market, how are you going to monitor those controls and how often, the experience of the customers that get that product, and what data you're going to review. And then I guess lastly, really the mitigation and those actions that you're going to take to address those issues. And once again, we've got a blank template here and we've got clear instructions sort of guiding you through this template. here we have the fair value assessment. So this is a quick assessment looking to figure out how you as a firm compare to the market in terms of your pricing structure, but also to make sure that your customers are receiving a great product, but B, it not at an extortionate price. So as we go down here, we've once again, this is an example template that we've filled out here for you, but we've got various considerations, including the benefits of the product, the limitations, the level of customer support, the potential total cost, A, to the customer, and B, to you as a business for providing that service. We then want you to rate where you think you lie within the template. So for example, the benefits of the product or service, you might think that your business has extensive service, numerous valuable extras, so you'd score it here a 5. And then going through, you can score each individual item, you can add more or take away less, and then tweak the score range. But essentially then you can figure out based on the result where you lie. So for example, this template is it lands in the good value section. So it exceeds basic needs with additional benefits, low non-financial costs, and effectively caters to vulnerable customers. Here we also have the customer lifecycle map and communications plan. So this is all about mapping the customer journey, making sure that for every touch point that the customer may need support or you are providing support, that you've really looked at that to figure out that all your customers are able to easily access support. And if they've got any needs or concerns, you're able to address them, once again, with that good outcomes in mind. So here you can sort of go through all the different timings of the customer that you might interact with them. So from your initial contact to onboarding to getting a quote, during KYC refresh in the future, and what happens when accounts are frozen, etc. And select then the channel that you do that in, explain what your customer needs and concerns are, and the key messages that you're trying to get across in that. So for example, the initial contact, if you just do transfers, let's say online through your website, that might be online, there might be a web chat, and you might also do email and phone as well. Customers, they're often looking to find out more information about the firm and an overview of the products and services. And this is where it's really key to make sure you introduce your company, overview your products, make sure you include sort of benefits, risks, regulatory protections if relevant, and how to get in contact for more information. Lastly, we have the outcomes monitoring plan. This template is divided into 2 sections, really. So you've got the monitoring plan on the left and the response plan on the right. So here what you're looking to do is figure out what measures you're looking to track to make sure that you're meeting what you set internally as your bar for consumer duty. So for example, let's look at complaints. You obviously, as a firm, don't want to see complaints ticking up. So your target outcome really is that your customers are not experiencing systematically a poor service and are therefore complaining on a regular basis. However, if the complaints suddenly do tick up, that you've got a plan in place to capture that data, you're checking it on a certain specific frequency, and you've then got a person responsible for noticing that trigger and then relaying it to somebody else within the firm potentially, who will have to respond. And then it's about, if you look over to the right of the spreadsheet, it's about figuring out what your action plan is. So from a short-term perspective, what are you looking to do to figure out how to reduce those customer complaints? And then from a long-term point of view, how can you improve your product so that you don't see those customer complaints coming through? And there are various different sort of metrics that you can look at, anything from churn to reviews as well, and third-party monitoring, price and fair value, etc. But yeah, once again, this is an example. Feel free to go through it and tailor it to your own individual firm's needs.
I think that's a good point, Dan. And what outcomes one firm might be monitoring might be different for another. So it's very important that you define what good outcomes look like to you and what monitoring and data you need to put against those. So it's going to be very unique and specific to each company.
Yeah, exactly right. I'll just run through the rest of this product quickly here. So once you've downloaded it, you can mark it as complete. Like I mentioned before, you can go back to the self-assessment tool at this point. Just go up to your score and hit retake assessment. You're able to then mark some of the questions that you weren't fully ready with as now ready. You then have the option to upload your evidence of compliance. This is a great place to store and evidence your compliance. So if the FCA ever come knocking, you can show them what you've done by before the deadline. So you can just upload any documents you'd like here as a PDF. You can then, as a company director, we recommend getting a company director involved at this point to make sure that they attest to being happy with your consumer duty policy. Once you then submit this form, it will then bring up a certificate, which is just a nice thing just to show that you were able to go through a framework, you were able to self-assess, and you were able to make sure that you as a firm were ready for consumer duty. And you can just download the certificate there. Now that I've showed you around the features of our consumer duty framework, let me show you quickly the other features of our platform. So like Fiona said, we're a compliance technology company. Our hero product is regulatory reporting automation. What this essentially means is that we've built a platform that means you don't need to use reg data anymore. We've built a 4-step process to automate your reporting. So we collect your data from various one-click integrations from your accounting providers to your screening software and to your bespoke transaction system. Once we collect that data, we map it to the relevant sections in the reports. And through that mapping, we've also customized each report based on your unique company permissions. So we only show you the relevant questions for each individual company. We then automate those questions from that data. And then lastly, we submit those reports directly via our connection to the FCA so that you don't have to use the FCA's platform and have fun with, for example, payment fraud and sticking in all the zeros, etc. We do that all for you. Along with the sort of integrations, we've built 2 complementary features to our platform to log complaints. Fraud one's coming too, so you're able to log it all here. And this, for example, automates the PS complaints report. The fraud section automates the fraud report. I can show you that in a minute. And lastly, we've built a compliance task management tool. So this will enable you as a compliance manager to assign different, for example, reports to different users or even external accountants, etc. You're able to then cross-collaborate not only on reports, but complaints and fraud logging. And yeah. So let me show you a quick report here. For example, if I go to our reporting schedule and I look at peers complaints, we've got a quick tutorial there. We've got the tasks that are related to that report. And then if we fill in the report, what it'll do is it will pull in that data from the complaints module and automate it. So if you've got very little data, it will automate that too. But it's great to show the FCA that you have a tool for monitoring those complaints, especially now consumer duty is coming into play. And there are also built-in alerts that will alert you, let's say, if your complaints suddenly tick up as well. So it's got that added feature within it. And likewise, throughout the report, what we've done is, well, I say we, Fiona's gone through the guidance. She's tried to explain in very simple terms what each question is asking for, so that you or anybody else within your team really understands what the FCA are looking for on each question. And then once you're finished, for example, you can then submit that directly to the FCA. And lastly, I'll just show you quickly, we've got an integration section. So several providers, more coming soon. We've got a teammate section where you can add different users, give them different access rights, etc. And then for the likes of close links and controllers report, what we've done is we've built an organizational structure chart. So that will automate those two reports as well for you. That gets the data, majority of it from Company's House. And so, yeah, that's pretty much it from my side. Let me get back to the presentation. I'll pass back to Fiona.
Thanks, Dan. So yeah, with the consumer duty coming in, it would be great for firms to also have a complaints monitoring system, a way of monitoring complaints systematically. So if you need that, that is built into our platform, which then automatically populates your PS complaints returns, and we deal with all of your other reg data returns as well. So with that very quick walkthrough, we're going to open it up for some Q&A now for the next 5-10 minutes or so. So if you have any questions, pop them in the Q&A below.
So the first question we have, Fiona, is how is treating customers fairly different from consumer duty requirements?
Okay, so the treating customers fairly principles came out several years ago, and the consumer duty essentially has it goes beyond those measures. So it's more prescriptive, and it goes further beyond treating customers fairly. Your duty, your obligations to treat customers fairly is one of the principles in the FCA handbook. So you will need to ensure that you're complying with that, but consumer duty essentially goes much further. So you have more to do. Somebody else is saying that they missed a good chunk of the session. Will the recording be available? Yes, it will be available within our platform. It will go up a little bit after this call, so maybe in an hour or so, so you'll find it then. You can watch it anytime.
Yeah, that's great. We'll be sending an email with full instructions of how to register, etc., for the platform, and then, yeah, how you go through it. Can you also, Fiona, another question, can you give examples of how to embed customer interests into our company culture?
Yes. So when you're thinking about culture, there's a couple of different things that the FCA have suggested you think about. So one of them is ensuring that you appoint a consumer duty champion at board level. So that person will drive the culture of consumer duty adherence and practices and good compliance from the board level down. They're responsible for ensuring that your company is meeting all of its obligations under the consumer duty. So that's a very sensible thing to do. The other thing to do is to make sure that you're training all your staff on consumer duty, and in particular how to identify vulnerable customers. That's going to be very important for your customer support teams, your sales teams, and all those guys and girls on the front line having interactions with customers. The other two things that you should consider in terms of culture are your remuneration policies. So making sure that you're not incentivizing staff to sell and sell the wrong product or service to a customer that it's not suitable for. And lastly, to make sure that you have good governance, that you have a program, so you've got the policies, controls and procedures, you've got an audit trail, and your board of directors is approving an annual assessment of your firm's compliance every year. So those are the core things you need to think about in terms of culture and good governance.
Okay, great. There's a few more questions. Would you like to pick one?
Oh, yes, there's a couple. The tool is good, by the way. I love it already. Thank you very much. How do you suggest with dealing with proportionality? That is a great question, and that is one that we have dealt with in our policy. So the FCA doesn't require perfection. They require you to act as a firm, to act reasonably. So what would a prudent firm in your shoes, in your position do? That's the benchmark. It is not absolute perfection. It is that you've acted reasonably, you've acted as a prudent firm, and that your policies and controls and procedures are reasonable and proportionate to your firm. So you could look at things like the size of your firm, your available resources, the complexity of your products and services, and your target market. And if you can form a reasonable narrative around that and why your measures are proportionate, that's acceptable. But we do have a section on that in the policy template, so take a look at that. So there's another one. Are firms meant to check every individual customer and assess each individual customer? No, the FCA doesn't require you to look at every single individual customer's needs. They require you to think broadly about your identified target market. So who are you going after? Maybe you have two personas in your business, for example. Maybe you have a persona of consumers and business customers, maybe small businesses that you deal with that would also be caught by the consumer duty, or very small organizations or charities. But if you think about, if you have two distinct customer personas like that, split them out and think of them as your individuals or your very small organizations, and split them out that way. But no, you don't need to assess every customer individually.
And somebody else there has asked, at what point do you distinguish between foreign exchange, which is, for example, unregulated, and cross-border payments?
Yeah, so I think there's some good guidance on the FCA's website about what constitutes pure FX versus a payment service. So the FCA have said that where a transaction is pure FX, where, say, I'm exchanging money with an FX or payments company, and it's coming from me and going back into my own bank account, where there's another beneficiary involved in the chain. So there's a third party, that would be a payment service. So there's some good guidance online on that point on the FCA website. But yes, where there's another party involved, you get into providing a payment service.
Okay. Another quick question here. What are some of the key indicators we should monitor to ensure we're achieving good customer outcomes?
That's a great one. And that will be possibly different for each firm, but look to our outcomes monitoring template, because it gives you lots of good examples. But you should be thinking about monitoring things like customer complaints, potentially customer churn, the results of any testing that you do in your communications to ensure that customers are understanding them properly. There's a whole range of things that you can look and test for. But if you refer to our outcomes monitoring plan, that will give you a good flavor, and you'll know what's relevant to your firm and just customize that accordingly. But there's a whole bunch of data that you could monitor and consider, but it's about tailoring it to your company and what's relevant to you.
Okay, great. And I think this is one of the last ones. So how do we ensure that our product meets the needs of consumers and we don't fall foul of consumer duty?
Yes, so two things. Run through that exercise where you identify your target market and you come up with a persona. This enables you to design and wrap your products and services and your support around your identified target market. So that's one way. The second thing you could do is run our product or services assessment. And that's where you have benchmarked your products and services against your customers' needs, characteristics, and objectives. So we have a template for that as well. So it's about thinking really deeply, do my customers' needs align with the offering that I'm providing them? And if not, where do I need to tweak that? And it's all about documentation. So as the regulator told us time and time again, if it's not written down, it didn't happen. So evidence that you've gone through that thought process, you've gone and done your assessments, and that you've made an action plan and you've written things down. Evidence is key.
Okay, great. Another question, is there a future fee to use your platform? The existing framework for consumer duty will be free. However, for future updates to it, when the FCA, I'm sure they will do in about 12 months, a year's time, will look to update their guidance, etc. That will all only be part of the paid plan.
I think it's just worth pointing out on that point, Dan, we have lots of other frameworks coming soon. So we will be rolling out similar frameworks across safeguarding, prudential, wind down plans, financial crime, everything that's relevant to your FCA regulatory obligations. We will be rolling out frameworks for them. So if you like this format, you can purchase similar frameworks in the future.
Yeah. And another question, how much will you charge for an SPI with Complyfirst? All our pricing is tailored based on your sort of unique permissions, number of reports, complexity of your systems. However, an SPI generally starts at probably around £200 a month. An API is around 500, and then an EMI is a little bit more custom depending on the level of integrations that they need. I think that is it for questions. So I'd like to thank, first of all, Fiona. I thought that was brilliant, really clear explanation of everything. I thought you did brilliantly. So thank you for all your hard work on preparing this today. And thank you very much, everybody, for coming to attend. We've really appreciated your support and participation. Thank you.
And one final thing from us, we will send you a feedback, a survey for feedback on Monday. Please do fill it in. It helps us improve our product for you guys and keeps us aligned with what you need. So please take a look at that and please fill it in. And if you've any questions, please get in touch with us. Our contact details are on the next slide, but you should have our email address. So any questions, please reach out. And thank you so much, guys. I hope you all have a great weekend.
Thank you. And if you need our contact details, they're there. So thank you and bye-bye.
Bye-bye.